Everybody, thank you for coming. We're getting started a little bit late, but we heard traffic was bad on the freeways, which isn't an unusual circumstance. If you don't know me, my name is Ed Harness. I'm the director of the Civilian Police Oversight Agency. We do this quarterly. We decided to do this one in particular at the request of Mr. Rickman from the monitoring team so that he could actually be face-to-face with the CPCs and go through the items on the agenda. And then we at the CPOA will have a little bit of finishing we'll do some updates on things that we've been working on. I want to thank the U.S. Department of Justice, that's in the front row here. Mr. Tierney, Ms. Martinez, Mr. Saucedo, Mr. Killebrew, Ms. Lopez, and Ms. Ferda, sorry. And so, Mr. Rickman, I turn it over to you.
Good evening, everyone, and it's good to be here to see old friends and to meet some new friends. Before I get started, I want to acknowledge the monitor and his trusted partner, Jim Ginger and Lloyd Owens, sitting back there. And so I just want to acknowledge those two. I want to also thank the CPC leadership and the other CPC members for not only showing up this evening, but all the hard work they do throughout the year. Community policing councils, this is volunteer, no one gets paid. They put up with a lot of criticism and a lot of flack from all kinds of circles. They plow ahead, and they really are true community servants. And I hope we never lose sight of that, and never lose sight of the commitment and the efforts they put towards making their community safer and better. So I want to point that out as well. I see they have me listed here as a CPC leadership mentor. I actually like that. But I'm also an associate monitor, and that's one reason why the CPCs exist is that they were created through the Sullivan Agreement. And I guess just for reference purposes, for those of you that pulled that Sullivan Agreement, pay attention to paragraphs 265 to 270, because those are the paragraphs that really cover the establishment and the mission of the CPCs. And so besides serving as a CPC leadership mentor, I'm also responsible for auditing those paragraphs and making sure that the CPCs with support from APD are meeting the requirements that are laid out in the Sullivan Agreement. CPCs were really, part of the thinking was that in order to make APD better, that you need ongoing community input and engagement, and you need to find a way to institutionalize that, and that's why the CPCs, are established. As you know, those are some of my old friends in the room who've been around for a while. This is not easy. Getting these things started and getting them stabilized and getting a core of folks to work on this and getting your attendance at the meetings and getting good agendas going and getting good discussions going and creating resolutions takes a lot of time and energy. And that's what they've been working on for the past couple of years. I am very proud to say that I think in spite of all the challenges, we've made some real progress, in large part due to most of the folks who are in this room. But I also want to acknowledge that we still have a ways to go. Today, I've got a couple of things I want to cover in addition to the items that are outlined in the agenda. Some issues that have come to my attention through various, folks who write me emails and stuff that I read and stuff that I follow on the internet. So I just want to throw these out. And so as we go through these discussion points, try to work these in as well. one issue that's reoccurring is the recruitment and retention of voting members in the selection process and criteria. Still seems to be some confusion about that. I know that at one point APD had issued some guidance on that, and then there was some pushback from the CPCs, and some new guidance was issued, and some of that onus was actually passed on to the CPCs to sort of help figure out. There is a membership form on the website, but there's really no specific outline of what the criteria is, so we get questions all the time about that. One of the requirements in the Summit Agreement is for the CPCs to have a cross-section of community representation in terms of voting members. So there's still some, some back and forth with exactly what that means and how can the CPCs accomplish that. Another issue that I hear about is the resources and the extent of support to the CPCs provided by the CNAPD. And so I get mixed feedback on that, so that's one of the things I'd like you for the CPC chairs to touch upon in their discussions today. This is one that certainly is a compliance issue, one that is outlined, I think, in paragraph 268. And that is, each of the districts, in consultation with the CPCs, are supposed to be developing a comprehensive community policing approach. And it's something that's come up when I do the reviews, and it's something that I really haven't seen a lot of discussion about progress. So I just want to highlight that it's something that should be happening. And then this has been ongoing from the very onset, and it continues to be an issue, and that is the development of the resolutions/recommendations, the tracking of those resolutions and recommendations, and APD's response to those resolutions and recommendations. So those are the kinds of things that, even in spite of being, 500 miles away, I still get the noise and the feedback and the input. So with that said, I'd like for us to, sort of go ahead and get started. I know I did throw out some questions, I think, in our last conversation, our last discussion, in preparation for this meeting, and so you guys can come prepared to talk about these things. The first question really concerns the resolutions. Now the resolutions are very, this is the output of the CPCs. You meet, discuss, go back and forth. This is what you're offering up. So it's very important. And so with that in mind, let's just have the first of all, chairs, introduce yourselves before you start talking, because I want everyone out here to know who you are and who you represent, and also give a little quick update on where you, from your estimation, where you are in developing your CPC, and then start answering some of the questions. I need your help on this in terms of how to proceed. I have 5 questions here. Should we deal with them separately, or should we just, in your discussion, just hit on these points? Or?
Let's go through them separately.
Separately, okay, we'll do that. Okay. Well, with that, let's start on this end, and let's walk down and introduce yourself and where you're from.
Sure. I'm Eric Olivas. I'm with the Northeast CPC. As far as resolutions that
Well, before you get that, tell us a little bit about where you think the Northeast CPC is in terms of its development.
I think the Northeast, I haven't actually attended any of the other CPCs. One of my feelings, I need to do that. But I think that we're a strong CPC. As far as I know, we have one of the highest levels of attendance as far as members of the public coming and attending meetings regularly. But that said, it tends to be the same subset of the community that's coming and attending meetings. Most of these folks have probably been coming to every meeting for a year, off and on. So I think that's one of our challenges, is actually expanding that cross-section of the community that shows up to these things. It's largely an older and wider crowd, than I think our city actually is. You know, we're a majority Hispanic city, and I think we've had a lot of difficulty in reflecting that. I think that's one of my concerns, is that it's very difficult to recruit folks that are working, people that are don't have a lot of disposable income, and these are people that deserve a voice in shaping APD, and so I think that's one of the areas that we're kind of weak on.
And that's a challenge for most, most of these kinds of organizations.
Absolutely.
So, unfortunately, most of the folks who have the time are usually retired or what have you. They tend to be older, and so.
And it certainly doesn't mean that those folks can't contribute or that they can't represent those folks that can't be there. But I think there's a definite deficiency there. We have, I'm going to address section 2 anyway, because in order to talk about how we're doing, we have 5 voting members with 1 in the audience that's going to be voted on. The first meeting he's able to attend, he's going through the CPA right now, so that'll be a total of 6. Most of us are less than a year on the council, so fairly new, but I think that we've really caught our stride. We've basically passed a resolution per month for the last 3 or 4 months probably, and I think that there've been some really meaningful resolutions that we worked on.
Exactly.
So we're about to move through tomorrow a resolution addressing the CPA, the Citizens Police Academy, which is a requirement for CPC members. I think it's probably our most substantive recommendation and quite possibly the most substantive that's come out of any CPC. Obviously, I'm a bit biased here in that, but we worked really hard on that, and this is addressing a lot of issues surrounding that organization, and I think it's a really strong recommendation that I hope can be implemented. But we've also had resolutions dealing with the community outreach position. So we have Nicole, who's not here tonight, but some of our questions internally were, what is her role? Who does she report to? What kind of information should we expect to get out of her? And so we created a recommendation that asked her for a quarterly report, asked for some other accountability from the department in that position, because it is primarily a CPC-related position. So that's what we're working on currently. One other resolution that we have in the works that I'm going to bring up now is a resolution on staffing. We know that the department's short, that there's chronic shortages of officers here, and we constantly hear that we have great recruiting numbers and lots of new recruits, but the numbers are actually declining. I think we're down 20 officers or something. Maybe we're back up 20 more, something like that, but really the numbers haven't moved overall. And so one of our real frustrations with these resolutions is that we've asked the department for information to help us draft resolutions, and we get the same information back that they push out at every meeting throughout the city, which is primarily recruiting information. We have 95 new recruits in the most recent class. What we asked for 2 months ago was information on firings, retirements, resignations, lateral transfers, and other things that are obviously going to deplete the pool, particularly of veteran officers. And we have not gotten a response to that. I also happen to know there's members of the community that have asked for this information and have not gotten a response for an even longer time than our 2 months. And as I said, the response we did get, we were very clear what information we wanted, and we received recruitment information. So I think one of the challenges in these resolutions is if the department wants meaningful input, they have to give us real information that we can actually do our job with.
What about feedback on the resolutions that you did pass? Written.
Well, I do have some written feedback here in front of me.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they're actually complying with the timeline that's laid out. I think it's 20 days, 30 days for a response, and then 60 days for an actual decision. I think we're probably sitting more at 60 days for a response, and I don't think we've actually gotten a decision back on, well, these most recent ones we do have decisions back on. but I'm thinking back to a couple that we passed last year that I don't think we've ever actually gotten a formal what's happening. So I think they've made progress on that front. I'll give credit where credit is due, but I think that there's things that can be improved in. And as far as, you know, this is my biggest frustration is I don't think these are going anywhere. I think these are checkbox. I don't want to monopolize the conversation here any longer, but I think that we're frustrated because it really does seem like we get this piece of paper and that's the end of the line. These recommendations are filed away and we cross that off and we're good. And I'm not sure that these are actually being implemented. Some on a scattered basis.
Good feedback, thanks.
So I'm Eric Jackson from the Northwest CPC.
One of the original
Yes, one of the,
CPCers.
yes, from the very beginning. And we have currently 7 members. So we're up quite a bit from where we were a year ago. We've got some very active members. And we have really seen an increase in our attendance. I think Selena and Nicole have done a good job of helping push word out that the meetings are coming up. Our crime specialist, or crime prevention specialist, has done a fantastic job on Nextdoor of pushing out that our meetings are coming up. That has absolutely helped us.
Next door, I hear that a lot.
Yes, and we're getting, we have some folks who are repeat customers, and love to have them there, and they've brought in some wonderful things. And we're actually seeing some turnover as well. We're seeing some new members every time, some new community members coming in. So that's been very, very exciting to see, because for a while it was...
We were on life support, tell the truth.
We had 2 members, and we would meet with the chief, and that was about it. So we're 7 members, we have the community coming out, the word is spreading, and we've had a number of folks who have come out to bring their issues and concerns. We're getting great support from our our commander, and our crime prevention specialist. They're doing a great job. There's always someone at the meeting to address issues or concerns for APD.
And I think in large part too, your persistence, your steadfastness, and you're seeing this through makes a big difference.
Yeah. And we've got a number of resolutions. We've got a couple of answers tonight on ones that have been outstanding. One of the ones we had pushed for was naloxone, or Narcan.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Change in state law has now kind of pushed our recommendation into a different arena where the state is now requiring all officers to be equipped. So
Save lives.
yes, and so the department had responded to us with, yeah, this is something we need to seriously look at, and we got our final response on that today of, yeah, you know, we're working with the law, etc. Another one that just today I saw, a man was killed in, I think it was, I'm not sure if it was California, went to meet somebody from Facebook to buy a puppy and ended up shot and killed. So one of our most recent responses was to increase what's going on with our safe exchange zones. APD has these zones at every substation, and what we have done is requested, and the department has agreed to a policy where folks can call in to the non-emergency number and have those safe exchange zones actively monitored by our real-time crime center. So if something does go on, there is another set of eyes looking at it. We've been getting, with Nicole on board, we've seen an uptick in the number of responses we're getting and the speed. I think having her able to devote more of her time to just the CPCs has definitely helped. And I think we have a process now in place that seems to be working for us. But I think it's an area, yeah, we need to to come up with some, I think perhaps better record keeping, and some way to catalog these things going on, so we know what to do when and when we're getting it.
Also, I compliment you on the quality and the insight of your resolutions.
I'm Ron Hobgewaks. I chair the Community Policing Council from the Southeast area.
Another old time here.
Another old timer, just like Eric. We were in the same group first started. I have a really good feeling about the Southeast Area Command.
Great.
We have 10 members to our voting board. Our participation by community members is doing very well. Partly dependent, we get some of the same people coming back in. But again, it depends on a subject that's to be discussed for that evening and who's there. We've had great response from the commander of Southeast Area. In his absence, he was in school for 3 months. Lieutenant was there, and members of the police force, officers. There was a point in time where we were on life support. I was the sole remaining member of the policing council in the Southeast area. And we have a full council, and I believe our council members are doing really well, working together, meeting together, exchanging ideas, and good question and answer periods and time. I've given you a copy that I printed some things out, and I'll be going through these later as we talk about resolutions, recommendations, and other things that are going on with our councils. But I feel like we've made extremely good progress.
Well, that's music to my ears. I remember where we were 18 months ago. It's just wonderful to hear this. Speaking of resolutions, tell us about your resolutions.
We have a resolution recommendation that we're working on. Hope to have it out very soon. And then I did receive a response from one of our earlier recommendations. And that is something that is an action item that's being done by the police force. But let me talk about the one that we're working on currently. This was brought up a few months ago following the graduation of one of the police academy classes, so the concern came up that, and I'll couch this in the next cadet academy. It starts November the 13th of this year. There are 6 testing weekends between June the 9th, which was just this past weekend, and August 18th in accepting candidates to the academy. Our next resolution concerns, 1, those individuals that may come close on the scoring of the testing to enter the academy, and 2, those cadets that may come close to graduation but have missed the required score to graduate. And a recommendation is, of course, the definition of close will need to be determined. What small percentage margin would be considered in each situation? We're recommending that the APD Police Academy develop a program of remedial assistance to those persons. That such program would be conducted either directly by the Academy or by an independent group or contractor. This would involve a follow-up with the possible candidates and those cadets that came close on the scoring but didn't quite make the score. For example, and it would be both physical and written exams. Maybe someone didn't do quite the number of sit-ups required in a time period. Well, maybe a little bit of work and exercise would help that, or maybe someone missed a question or 2 on the written exam. And maybe there could be some coaching, remedial action where they could retake the exam or something like that and become qualified to be a cadet, or could be a graduate of the program. You may not score big numbers in recruits or cadets, but there are some people that might make very good police officers. just not quite meeting that cutoff. And so that's our recommendation, is to look for a margin where some people might be reconsidered.
Another very thoughtful recommendation, and hopefully one that they'll seriously consider. And because everybody's having a problem recruiting now, and this might be a way to help get it there. Excellent.
Community did you have a question, Paul?
I don't know if it's appropriate to make comments right now.
Sure, go ahead.
Just very quickly, I love the resolution. I love the safe zone resolution too, and I think the North Valley CPC should co-sign that safe transfer resolution. Love your resolution too, and I was just going to say that it would be great, like any good school, if the academy tried to identify cadets early on, not just at the end, who looked like they had potential but they're having problems, and give them help early on, not just at the end.
Well, we're currently going through the Citizens Police Academy, and many of the things you're talking about, we addressed with the people there. Are you aware that they have a mentor program?
I did not know that they had a mentor program.
They have a mentor program. These are volunteer police officers who help these cadets make it through. The woman who is in charge of the program now, Anna, will go out and run with them, will do push-ups with them, will help them to make it through. They really try very, very hard to get these people through, and they are doing almost exactly what you're talking, well, they are doing exactly what you're talking about through this mentor program, and it's working.
Well, I think the issue came up in the Southeast because I was there for that discussion regarding recruiting, because the chief is very big about, we had 1,000 applicants and we could only get 30 to pass. Well, why are they washing out? And the discussion came up that some of them are narrowly missing the physical, some of them are nearly missing this. So this started out more as recruitment as opposed to mentors and people in the academy. And so I think when you're asking for your numbers, I think it would be very interesting to find out the numbers of why people are washing out and why they're not being hired by the department. And is it simply the physical? One thing that came up, and this dovetails, APD is in the process of examining its policy on recruitment. And what came out of that discussion is that if you're an out-of-state recruit, you get treated differently than an in-state recruit. An in-state recruit, if you miss your physical test, that's it for you, and all you can do is come back and take the physical again. If you're an out-of-state recruit, you will get to come back and take the physical again, but they will go further in the examination. They will look at your personal statement, and they will look at your background. And if they determine that you're okay by that, they'll allow you to come back. Where if you're an in-state recruit, they won't do that. They won't take that further step for in-state recruits. So they've gone back to re-examine how they're doing some of this recruiting. And so that's just a part of the equation.
Yeah, it helped me out. I think that, if I'm reading it correctly, I'm hearing it correctly, the mentoring takes place prior to the testing. Is that?
Yes.
No, that's in the academy.
When they're in the academy.
During
Once they're in the
They're
academy.
in the academy.
in the academy, but when they actually are given when they actually have to.
Right.
Right.
But we've also heard that, and to me, this is just mind-blowing. You're from out of state, you know what the requirements are. They're on the website. You know how many push-ups you have to do. You know how many sit-ups you have to do. You know what you have to run 1.5 miles in.
But
And
do you
they come in
know
here-
the difference between doing it flat and at elevation?
Sure.
That's a significant difference.
Well, it is, but then they come, the point is that they're not coming into this blind,
Right.
and some of them will come in and make it one time around the track and say, oh,
Well,
that's it.
clearly that person would have a lot more remedial training to go through as opposed to somebody who missed it by 2 sit-ups or
Yeah.
2 push-ups or something like that.
Exactly.
So that was the inception of the discussion.
Yeah.
All right, why are people washing out? How close are they? If they're close, why isn't APD following up with them and molding them to get to that point where they can pass? As a recruiting effort, as a part of what you're doing as recruiting. And so that was the inception of the mentoring program and the resolution from the Southeast.
Didn't you tell us, well, you were with Los Angeles?
No, I was with Milwaukee.
Okay.
Yeah, Milwaukee, yeah.
Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Was it your program that had officers who would, from the union, who would provide that kind of support? to-
Yes, yes.
So
We
there is
had,
a model
we
for
had,
it.
we had representatives from the Milwaukee Police Association contact us off of the recruiting list, and they held Saturday sessions to prepare us to take the examinations, both physical and written. And that was part of Milwaukee's recruiting effort.
Well, it sounds like that's what the mentoring you're talking about, but also see that even in spite of mentoring, they still don't pass, but come close. This other piece would step in.
That's what we.
So
yeah.
I see one thing here, though, that keeps coming up, and there's always this narrative that it's about recruits, but there's 2 sides of this game. And in fact, I would argue from a community policing standpoint, the veteran officers are more important for us to be looking at than recruits. Because these veteran officers know their communities, they know hotspots, they know major players in those areas, and as the department is clearly shedding these people pretty quickly, I think it's incumbent upon all of us to be very concerned about that side of things as well as people coming in. But that's where my data on firings, resignations, transfers, that sort of thing.
We
I
need
think
to get to
really
retention
need-
issues, that's all.
we need to know about retention, and there's talk, in the city council of funding more of this retention bonuses and things like that. But maybe that doesn't matter. Why are these people not sticking around? Is it money? Is it training? We don't know.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, we
And
definitely.
really need to know. That's the bottom line.
Sounds like a good discussion in CPC.
And I had a few things.
Go ahead.
Are you gonna have time for questions or comments at all?
Yeah, that's what we do, yeah, I mean, this is pretty
We finished
unstructured.
introductions.
Yeah, but we're trying to get,
Because I think I can answer some of your questions.
Well, we need to let them finish.
That's fine.
yeah.
I'm Edwina Cairo, I'm the Valley Area Command, CPC. Currently, we have 5 voting members, 4 of us are here tonight. We have a good participation level. As other CPCs have mentioned, we have the same people that return every month. We have an older group that participates. For the past 2 months, though, however, we've been overwhelmed at our meetings with attendees because the APD airport security team has been joining us. And I feel that we have adequate support from APD. Our commander is there almost every month. We have at least 2 officers, Sergeant Sanders and one of his officers are there. Sergeant Sanders is the PAC team supervisor. It's a community policing council initiative that's been started within the past couple of months. And he's visiting the various CPCs to discuss this team and gain interest and assistance from them. And we get a lot of support from Nicole. She advertises on Nextdoor. I also advertise on Nextdoor. I talk to my neighborhood association to try and gain interest. But we're having a hard time gaining new council members. I don't know what the issue is. Well, I do have an idea, but I'm not going to say what it is in front of everyone. But we do have a concern interviewing new members. Resolutions, we had resolutions in late 2016. We don't have any new resolutions this year. Most of our resolutions from last year have been viewed. A couple of them passed.
You got feedback from all your recommendations?
Most of them, sir.
So it's May now. What are the barriers to generating recommendations?
We haven't, I don't know what the barriers are. Our CPC is, I feel our CPC is struggling. We can't get new council members. We're not being able to capture new community members or people to attend our meetings. We have the same group coming every time, which is fine. But we don't have any feedback from the community as far as resolutions are concerned, what they would like to see us do, what they want us to do.
So you need some help.
Yes, sir.
When do you guys meet?
The fourth Thursday of every month.
But we don't want you to feel, abandoned. Hopefully some of your colleagues and maybe I can spend a little bit of time with you as well. To kind of help you along.
And where do you guys meet?
The training academy.
Oh, okay.
Next.
I'm Michael's local with the Southwest. I don't want to say we're totally on life support, but we're pretty close. We have a very, I think our biggest barrier is recruitment and community input. It just isn't there. I am happy to say we do at least have 5 people now. For a time they were down to 3, and all 5 are here, so that's kind of nice to see. And what? I think from my perspective, and this might be more of a personal thing, is that I became the chair kind of midway, and I'm still trying to learn the waters and the ropes and get reports out that I didn't know I had to do, and finding information and like drowning, going like, what have we done? And it has, sadly to say, it hasn't been much, but I think a lot of that is because we've struggled to have even 5 people for a while, voting members, and issues of quorum come up, these types of things, and so things get pushed and pushed and pushed back. So now that we have more active membership, we're working on 4 resolutions. One of them is a talk-to-text type of program for officers, so they don't have to sit and absolutely write out all their reports. Some of the stuff that I've been able to research is that a number of departments in Minnesota have done this, and have cut paperwork by about 80% in their officers, so they can spend more time on patrol, and they can dictate. And in the tech-savvy universe today, a lot of people may not be able to, type as well, unless they do one of these and it's a text. So that's one of them. The other one that was of concern of our council was the heat and our officers in their heavy uniforms with all that equipment. So we're drafting one to go to a lighter uniform in the summertime. A lot of departments do that, more of a polo cotton blend type of thing. So they, and maybe if possible, for commanders and lieutenants to remind their officers to drink plenty of water, be mindful of the heat and these types of things, just so they don't get stressed out with the heat, with heat-related illnesses. It was very controversial. It met with a rather substantial amount of resistance, but we're going forward anyway, is non-verified alarms that would not affect financial institutions or places of medical types of facilities. Statistically, I believe Albuquerque Police Department did a study on how many officers it takes to respond to these alarms that are unverified. And the results were pretty staggering. 13 officers, full-time officers. If we had 13 full-time officers, that's all they would do, is respond to non-verified alarms, which most of them are being false. So the resolution is going to ask that security agencies verify the alarm first before they send an officer out. Traffic collisions. traffic collisions that are under, I believe, just a fender bender, where there's obviously no injuries, not to send an officer. If they need a report for insurance purposes, they can do that online. They can have a service aide go out, give them a report. A lot of those at times end up being cold reports anyway. So we feel that the officers would spend more time on patrol and not responding, especially, I mean, we were at the dispatch center last week and they had 52 calls holding. And that's frightening and it's sad, and I just can't imagine what these officers, they're trying to, so anything we can do to kind of lessen some of the things that citizens can do or police service aides can do, we're trying to come up with some stuff. So those are the 4 that we're working on right now. I believe that we have, one of the things that I don't know how much of a problem it was, I think the transition was very, very smooth, is that we got a new commander in our area who has done a stellar job. Commander Campbell is there every week. She's got a lot of her staff there. The day lieutenant, Lieutenant Chris George, is the bomb. He has been very, very supportive. I've been able to meet with him a number of times, just discussing certain things, and he's been very forthcoming with information, and he's been very giving of his time. So, and we always have officers at our, and like your command center, the Valley, we did have the airport detail show up, which kind of is a bit overwhelming because I number one wasn't real sure what to make of it, because we had actually at our last meeting we had more police officers there than we had community members there. So I felt kind of like I was at a briefing for, I was waiting for a crime report to come out. So that was a little bit, I wouldn't say, for me it wasn't really unnerving, but I don't know how the other members felt. That I think that if you're not used to that, it can be kind of like, what's this about?
We had the airport.
Did you have them too?
Group.
Yes.
Yes.
And I mean, it was fine. I was okay with it, but I wasn't real sure what the purpose of it was.
Apparently a memo must have gone out
Okay.
to them to show up. We had one of their canine guys show up.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
We just adopted the airport as part of the Albuquerque Police Department. So per the CASA, each officer has to get 2 community meetings per their inception. So
All right.
they want to learn
All
about
right.
so they're getting those suckers knocked out right.
Okay.
Check the box.
Check that box.
But it's also good for them to learn about the CASA and learn about what you're discussing and learn about the recommendations that affect them too, because the recommendations that you pass as totality now affects all of APD. So whether it be window tint that's passed in the foothills, it also affects the airport police. So they have to know what's going on and understand this process too.
Perfect. Well, that makes sense now. Okay. Recruitment is a huge problem for us, and community involvement. We do get people with concerns, wanting to know why the helicopter is flying above their house. But then we never see them again. And I mean, and Commander Campbell has been wonderful at explaining how all that works.
When can they see the drones?
Yeah. No, I mean, and that was actually, she actually had asked about if we were going to have drones. The woman actually asked if they were going to have drones flying over, and if they were they going to have cameras? And it's like,
looking in their windows.
Looking in their windows, and Commander Campbell was very, very forthcoming with information and explaining why, the helicopter is up. And it may not even be APDs, it might be the Sheriff's Department, but the kind of the interagency stuff that goes on that. But we don't really get repeat people coming in, taking an interest in what we do, and a few people show up every now and then to get the crime report kind of thing, and what the police department is doing about it. And again, the officers that respond to those have been very, very thorough.
Do you use the next door app as the others are doing? Just curious.
Well, and this is something that's posted, Nicole posted on each each district, so they're reminded. And then for ours, I try to put something out. We have a neighborhood association Facebook page. I have my own, and then we use Nextdoor as well for our area. The Southwest is just more closed mouth, I think. It's just a different group of people in many ways. They're very much to themselves, a lot of them.
And very spread out, huh, Jan? I mean, it's not cohesive,
Yeah.
Well-
you know, area-wise.
And that's one of the real problems too, is the fact that the Southwest is the only area that can really grow and develop, so it is.
In big groups.
But in big groups, you know, our HOA is 1,004 homes, and we have 2 major streets separating us. Next door, there's going to be going in 50 homes. There'll be a development unto themselves. And, you know, how to get the word out to all of these people and into these new developments. And then, you know, the older ones aren't necessarily locking into Nextdoor or any of those kinds of databases to get the information. You know, if they don't have an organized community,
Right.
which a lot of them don't, they don't even have an NA, let alone an HOA. So they're,
Try some different strategies.
the communication efforts, I'm not sure, we need to do more though. Because they, you know, they come with their complaints, they come with their concerns, but they have no solutions.
Yes.
You know, that's the other thing, they have no solution.
Well, that's the,
Well, I think, I want to interject there, because I think that part of my frustration and internally that we've had on our own council is that we are not only unfunded volunteers that must commit a significant amount of time, but after that, we have no guarantees of results. So when I have people ask me, what do you guys do? The real answer is, we have meetings. And we spend a lot of time writing recommendations that basically no one has to read. And they certainly don't have to implement. And I think we have the same problem over at the CPOA and CPOB, is we have toothless agencies, and we're asking volunteers to commit their time to come in and do really important work with absolutely no guarantee that they will be heard, and even if they are heard, that change, positive change will actually affect from that. And that's really my biggest concern is, we have a lot of great recommendations, and the low-hanging fruit is certainly being snapped up and implemented very quickly. But the really tough questions here, things like, you know, reforming substantive policies, are not being tackled, and I suspect if they were, they're going to be shut out. You have this loop in the Office of Policy Analysis that is controlled completely by upper echelons of the command staff, and there is no way for the community to break into that. So if CPCs are supposed to be bridging that gap, there is no bridge to the other side. It's a bridge to a cliff where you may or may not get over.
Can I say something that comes off of that that's a little different? The entrance criteria for voting members is very daunting. And I just, when I first heard it, I was like, what? I have to go to a 3-month academy, I have to do a resume, I have to write a cover letter, I have to have an interview. I volunteered for a lot of things in my time, and all I had to do was show up. So this surprised me. And the CPA originally, I mean, I dragged myself there kicking and screaming, and I do understand the value of it, and it has taught me a lot. But at the same time, there is still this slight grain of resentment that I'm doing 2 evenings a week for 3 months.
this has been an issue from the very onset.
So a lot of people that you interrupt, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, a lot of people get turned off when they find out the criteria.
That's been an issue from the very onset, and I know, Selena, please weigh in. There's been some discussion about having a modified kind of academy experience. But I'm curious, I think someone mentioned to me today to do a work on a resolution to that effect.
We are.
Okay.
Oh, is that your resolution?
Yeah. And it's really it's more than just the CPC side of CPA. It's really the fact that this is a very unstructured class. We thought there was a lot of room for, we have a principal, several teachers on our council, and they saw a lot of room there. I'm a recent college graduate, fairly recent, and we all saw a real need there for curriculum development. You know, a lot of these sessions were kind of loosey-goosey, exactly. And there's a need for sorry, no.
No, it's me. I just wanted to say that this is a new person running it now.
But that's the problem, there has to be continuity there.
I sense a lot more structure. I mean, I wasn't around for loosey-goosey, and that's one thing I'm not picking up this time around. I'm finding it very structured.
But it has to be consistent, and the coordinator changes, I think, every 3 sessions or a few sessions. No, I mean every, so you're one class.
Right.
Each one does something like 3 or 4 classes. So there's a constant turnover in that position.
Yeah, but you're developing
So what we're asking the department to do is actually make a structured class, make units, make lesson plans, make goals and objectives and assessments, and actually have this thing be a class. I mean, there's no reason that this needs to be.
I went through all that. I'm not going through all that on a volunteer basis 2 evenings a week.
Well, we address that too.
Yeah,
that for volunteers to go to a class that's longer than a college course is.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I just want to say this and then I'll be quiet. That I will, promise. No, I'm bad at it, but I will. I'm getting out of it as an education about the various police departments and what they do and how they help the public. Personally, that's all I feel I need. If there's lesson plans and crap like that, sorry, but I went through it for 19 years. And if I find out that's part of the CPA, or if I knew it's part of the CPA, I wouldn't do it, period.
Okay, but you're going to work on a resolution and
Yes.
It's already, it's been public for 2 months.
Right.
I would say we've received 0 comments from
We haven't
anyone. This has been.
Well, this is something I suggest.
It's been sent out to the chairs of every CPC.
I was going to suggest that people share the resolution.
We've blasted out to Nicole, Selena.
It has not gotten to every one of the chairs, the Southwest chair. So we have at least 2 that have not received it. Have you gotten it?
I have to go back and look.
So when you all share resolutions, what's the process? Just curious. Do you send?
There isn't.
There you go.
That's one of the issues, one of the
The
problems.
structure of
There's not a.
is terrible. And even our mandates, under the CASA, one of our mandates is that we are supposed to have diversity. Okay, hey, I'm good with that. But what's the subjective way to look at that? Because there isn't any listed. You don't have to have this number of this and this number of that and this percentage of this and this percentage of that.
Trust me,
It's so open-ended and so.
And what the CASA does do is it does give you examples. We read that paragraph. It says such as, and it points out.
Right, but you can't drag people kicking and screaming to come to a community meeting for 2 years every month, plus all of the other things. Keep
Well,
in
how are we going to
mind,
judge whether we did it or not is the point.
keep in mind that Larry and I came to your 2 weekend sessions.
Right.
We weren't even voting members yet, and no one else from the Southwest was there.
I remember.
I'd like to go back for a minute.
Yeah.
And I'll come back and address the question of resolutions and recommendations.
Right.
I wanted to make a comment, though, about attendance and participation. Part of it depends on, we've tried to focus some of our meetings on very special areas. And so I kept track. In January, we had 4 officers from APD. One of the sergeants gives a community report, crime report, and that sort of thing. And we had 42 community guests.
Good. It's excellent.
I'll go through the months, and I'll come back and talk about January for a minute, because I think that's important as a part of Albuquerque and the concerns in Albuquerque. In February, we again had 4 officers, a sergeant, a lieutenant, and 8 community guests. In March, we had 7 officers from APD and 12 community guests. In April, 6 officers and 16 community guests. In May, we had 20 officers, 17 from the airport, and 12 community guests. We have most recently had a guest talking about the standard operating procedure use of force. And we're working on and reviewing the use of force to make some recommendations for the use of force. Back in January, though, we had 2 speakers that shared the time for speaking, and that's one of the reasons 42 community guests. We use Nextdoor very much to make announcements, and we try to spread the word through the neighborhood associations. The speakers were a gentleman that heads the Rock at Noonday Shelter regarding mental health issues and the homeless in Albuquerque. And so it's a day shelter. It's not an overnight shelter, but people can go in and shower and bathe and wash their clothes and things like that, get fed. The other speaker was from an organization called Healthcare for the Homeless. And it's a center that provides free medical and dental care and counseling services. There's no requirements for Medicaid or Medicare or anything like that. And they did a tremendous job. And the people that came to that January meeting were very concerned about the homeless that we have in Albuquerque and what's happening. And those 2 speakers did an extremely fine job. And I would recommend to the other CPCs to invite them to their meetings.
So when you do the next door announcements, you just don't announce the meeting, but you may have more success if you highlight who is speaking.
We announce our speakers and what's going to be happening in each of our meetings. Discussions, we always have a period for questions and answers, sometimes during the presentation or sometimes following, and try to have both focused on speakers and what they're saying and questions. And then also a time for people to just bring concerns to us about people sleeping in the alleys behind their home and trash is being left behind and syringes and things like that, needles.
So you select, not only do you announce the speakers, you select issues that have some relevance.
That's correct.
To those communities.
Right.
And that's how you draw people in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are good insights and lessons for all CPCs. So I think everyone's had a chance to introduce themselves. The other questions, you all touched upon most of them in your answers. Just go through them real quickly. You all had any comment. How many voting members do you currently have? I think
we have 10.
Pretty much all you touched on that.
And just an outstanding participation by our voting members, our council members, getting to know each other and sharing in a discussion and exchanging ideas within the council and with the community guests that have come in to attend.
Now, since you talk about voting members, Selena, just for clarification, from your vantage point, what is the criteria to be a voting member?
That you attend the Citizens Police Academy and that you are interviewed and accepted by the board. But attendance of the Citizens Police Academy does require you to pass a background check.
Now, I've had a couple of questions through the internet saying, what constitutes the background? What are they checking for?
You can't have any active warrants, and say you did have a traffic warrant or something, you'd have to go get that cleared and bring us proof that that warrant has been cleared. You can't have any sexual convictions for crimes, so stalking, any child sexual crimes, rape, those types of things, and no violent felonies in the last 5 years.
And that's all you check?
Yep.
Is that written down in?
Yes.
Is it on the website?
You can
It is in the Northeast guidelines. It was laid out by our commander, Randy Remacher, who said, I mean, he made the issue very simple because we had internal discussions about that and confusion, that when you go on a ride-along with an officer, they take your ID and run your ID, look for warrants, felonies, all that sort of thing. If you can pass that background check to go on a ride-along, you are unofficially welcome to join a CPC. And then you officially join once you have your CPA completed and all these other things.
Is that the same background check, the exact same?
Yeah.
Now, the other issue that's come up is, can they participate as voting members while they are going through their Citizen Police Academy?
Yes.
Yes.
And even you have until your term is up to complete the Citizens Police Academy.
And these are all things that are in our guidelines that we put together. So the key with APD and the background check was we require people to do ride-alongs. If you cannot pass the ride-along background check, then you cannot fully participate in the CPC. So that's why we have that background check. But in our guidelines, we have said we expect people to do the CPA within, and we expect a 2-year commitment for folks, and we expect them to do the CPA at some point in those 2 years.
Is that consistent across all CPCs?
No.
No.
Ah,
The
well.
2-year requirement is not in our guidelines. We altered them in pretty minor ways, but Northeast does have slightly different guidelines. And we will allow a 1-year term as well as a 2-year term because it's a volunteer position. And that is one more barrier to getting someone to join to say, I have to do this for 2 years.
I thought we had 2-year and 3-year terms. I agree to
Depends, right?
Yeah.
I think we have 2 and 3-year terms.
I may be wrong.
I think that one of the things that's important, because we can't predict what happens in the future to our family, our children, or our situations,
Right.
healthcare or anything like that, is that you may make a commitment to serve a policing council for 2 years, but it's okay to resign.
Absolutely.
And we have that in there, that we're flexible.
Okay, because I get questions about this and others do as well, and it's confusion. Selena, is it possible, and because and this is the way it was designed, I think some time ago we decided each CPC should have some leeway in terms of how they decide what voting members are.
Yeah.
Is there a way to at least put this online?
Yeah.
So if I live in the valley and I want to be a CPC voting member, I can go online and see what the criteria is.
Yes, sir.
I know you have the membership application online, but I think having that criteria online would certainly help maybe alleviate some confusion.
Has every chair, or has every council passed guidelines, final
We're
version?
working on our guidelines.
Because if each one is different, then we need to have, I know mine is different,
Yeah,
and
each
ours
one-
is online.
Each
but
one needs to
each
have
one needs to
their
have
own, needs to be clear.
We started out with Book of Order, and it wasn't called guidelines. And so we initially were working through what were then later to become guidelines. So we're finalizing our guidelines. And it comes close to.
They're going to be
agreeing with
similar,
the others.
yeah, but they're going to be a little bit. You have a right to have your own.
Sir, I'm wondering why does every CPC have to have their own guidelines? Why can't we have one standard?
Well, that's up to the CPCs.
Yeah, and that's what we at one point were going for.
Yeah.
And I think we've had, with the changes in leadership, we've kind of drifted away from.
So that's not
from one
accurate,
side.
Eric, because Annie, who was one of the original cohort, was the one that actually pushed for each. Actually, she pushed for 2 things. She pushed for calling it guidelines and not rules, which I think was very sage advice, that these were something that, we're developing these bodies. We need to have some flexibility here.
Mhm.
And 2, she pushed for each area command to have independent guidelines, because the CASA actually lays out that these are to be organic groups that serve the different needs of the different communities in Albuquerque. So Southwest may be very different from Northeast, which may be
There's not
very
going to be
different from
enough of a
Northwest.
difference in most of these things. And when we were in the training, we did work towards having a unified set of guidelines. And it's after that training that we have slipped away from that to individual guidelines. And it's up to us to decide, should we have significant differences in these guidelines? And I think we can make a strong argument for not having 6 different sets of guidelines when we're dealing with one community. And I think the guidelines are vague enough and we have enough flexibility in them that we can come up with a unified set.
So Eric, I would just interject and say here, and this is one of my biggest concern when I came on, is these groups have been going for 2 years, and there were no guidelines. And there still aren't in some of these councils. So we're going down 3 years with some councils not having official guidelines.
There's always been guidelines, they're just evolving and changing.
But I mean adopting them, posting on the web. I have people coming to meetings asking me, what are the requirements for being a CPC board member? And the answer is, I can tell you, but as far as having something written down, it depends. Because my area command has passed this, Eric's has, but maybe some of the others haven't. And this creates, I agree with you, a patchwork of rules is
just a suggestion that
not ideal.
One could propose a standard set of guidelines and share them with all the CPCs, and they can make a decision as to whether or not they want to negotiate or modify. And you may not be able to work it out. If not, then you have to separate guidelines. You may be able to work it out. You can have one set.
I think there may be minor differences in guidelines, like terms of serving on the council. Whether it's
so we have a very major difference.
We have a big difference. On the original guidelines, APD was given a vote. We do not give them a vote. They get a vote at the end. Why are we giving them a vote?
I know we had that up until recently because we needed them to vote, because we didn't have enough people. That was the reality of the matter. And when we got enough voting members, we changed that.
And then we voted them off.
And we actually voted them not to have a vote.
So these are changes we can make, and I think we've got the flexibility to have. Does APD get a vote? We don't need them. We don't need them to have a vote. Okay, we can put that in the guidelines. We can. What we started with and where we are now are very different places. Yeah. And what we started with and we have changed and evolved over these last 2.5 years. So we're in a much different position now, and we should be constantly looking at these guidelines.
Right.
Say, does this continue to make sense? Does it make sense to have terms, 2 years, and then what? We kick you off? It hasn't happened with us.
Well, experience is the best teacher, and as you guys go through this, you come up with better answers.
So I think we can come up with a unified set of guidelines, and I think the input that the Northeast and the Valley have, we can modify those guidelines for everyone, and we can come to an agreement on a unified set. So if somebody wants to join the Northeast CPC, they're not getting different guidance than if they want to join the Northwest CPC.
And if they move.
And if they move, we should have...
They can still, and they were a CPC member in the Northeast.
Yeah.
And they can go move to the Valley and they say, hi, I'm a voting CPC member, I've done all the requirements, and they could spread out their arms and say, welcome, brother.
Yeah.
I thought there was a residential rule, though, that you had to be in that area.
Well, if they moved there, if they're living there.
Yeah.
We're talking about them moving from physically from one house to a house in another.
So if they lived in the Northeast and they got smart and moved to the Northwest, for instance. and yeah, that's not smart.
Okay, well,
It's very rare, I know.
This is a good discussion with Frank. I guess two takeaways. One, that there may be a need to work on trying to develop, one set. And if you can work it out fine, if not, then it's okay too. But at least you can make an effort to do that. And I guess the second takeaway is, in the meantime, can we post something so I won't get these emails asking me what the criteria is?
Well, that actually brings up another point that we've had an issue with, and that is what goes on at the interview. How do we decide who gets on and who doesn't.
Right, good point.
We have a set of questions that we ask at our interview, but it comes down to who's on the board now and how they feel about that person.
That you may not be able to standardize. That's
Yeah.
probably still gonna be pretty much.
But I think we need to come up with some idea of what we're looking for. And one of the big issues for us has been, we need people, and we want people who are community-oriented and are willing to work with that diverse group of people. And we've so far had one person that we have turned down because there were issues just in the interview process of cooperation with the group.
Right.
So it's a very amorphous thing, and but I think maybe we can come up with some sense of what we want to see in people, or some level of guidance of what we're expecting out of people. And but it is challenging. We don't want to nail it down.
Yeah. Well, it's something you guys had experience with now. I think some more discussion among yourselves can maybe get you there. The other point to raise is to revisit the police academy department. You're working on the resolution for that, circulate maybe, and have some joint discussion around that as well.
Yeah.
So I think those are two critical things that.
Yeah, the Academy has promised that they will put together a smaller, more streamlined curriculum for the Police Oversight Board, and I would imagine that the CPC should be eligible to take that smaller, more streamlined course as well.
That would be good.
Or the other idea would be that there's the ability to take some of the courses online instead of having to go to the academy twice a week. So that's been promised yet not delivered as yet. Because the Police Oversight Board has the same issue, you know.
Yeah.
The requirement that they go to these courses before they become a voting member, and we're at the point where we may have some people coming off in February, and we may not have a quorum in the future to vote on some very critical issues.
I think it's important to know that that's not an APD or a city requirement, that's a CASA requirement. So that's not a self-imposed APD imposing that on the councils, that's per the CASA.
That's true, but.
Which was drafted in part with APD.
But how the academy experience is ultimately defined, you have flexibility.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
And I think that we were looking at meeting the needs of the CPOA and the CPCs. I think it really will mesh well together, and I imagine that, we look forward to that.
Well, then it does beg the question, what is the goal of the CPA? Because I've seen it very clearly when I've been going, that it is for us to have an awareness of separate departments and how they serve the community.
Yeah. And
Every
the question,
week we get a different department
Yes.
over the
Yeah.
3-month period. So if we do it another way, every week, it is every week. God, I've spaced that one out. Denial.
yeah, and that's one of the issues then. What do we take out?
Yeah, what do we miss?
What do we not need?
Well, it's fun having the dogs and the horses and the helicopters.
Well, I mean, for
But
those of
maybe-
you who have been through
yeah.
the experience and now stood on
Yeah.
CPCs, you may have some insight as to what
Right.
they need to keep it.
Yeah, maybe those of us that have gone through it,
Yeah.
which is fairly legion, could discuss that and
Exactly.
see what has
Right.
turned out to be really useful.
Right.
I mean, some of it I've gone away thinking, oh my God, I had no idea, I've learned so much from this evening's presentation. Other times I've walked away thinking, this is terrible.
For the rest of my life, I'm not gonna
That's
get
3
back
hours of
again.
my life. I mean, there's been very few of those, there's only been 1 or 2.
I think
You know,
one of the issues, go ahead.
I was just going to add that real quick that the requirement for the civilian, or to be part of the academy is in the agreement. And so it was something that
Yes.
DOJ and the city agreed that
Yes.
that would be a good thing to have. And the rationale is that as the voting members who are making recommendations to APD, that you can help shape a recommendation to have the greatest chance of success of being adopted, because you open up your meetings to the community and to the public, who can have a lot of different ideas, right? But it needs to be packaged in a way that is really going to be practical, that has a good chance of success.
And that you have an informed point of view.
Exactly. The more you know how
if you have
APD
no
works,
idea what a department's
that's all
doing,
helpful.
you can't make the recommendations.
So I think there's a consensus that it's a good thing, but it's also a consensus that
We are not advocating to
it needs to
remove
be,
it.
it
No, I
needs to
know that.
be modified and altered, so it won't be such an onerous thing for folks to go through. It won't discourage people from becoming members.
Right.
I think that one of the things that we need to decide is what is the objective for it? What do we need to know?
Right.
You know, in terms, and what does the academy offer?
However,
I
I
need to know things, because I've been through 3 of them through various agencies. And they're all very different, and they all focus on very different things. And each of them has, you know, their objective, but when you sit on a council like this, is what do we need to know to make better recommendations for the department?
And I think that's where the experience of those folks who've been on CPCs for a couple of years, who've been through the training, can tell you, well, this is relevant, and you know, this is more relevant.
But
And I
that
think
is
it
where
has
the
to be.
guidelines actually conflict with the CASA, because in the guidelines, we do not require you to take the we had one of our members, I'm not gonna name her, but she served on the council for 2 years, she was an original member. She took the CPA with me. She was already leaving the council. She left, I think, the same month that she graduated. So if the intent was to inform members, which I think there is a lot of good information to be taken there, then allowing someone to go 2 years in their position and then say, okay, now you have to take the class before you leave,
That was,
it's completely pointless.
that was one of the things that I was gonna bring up, that they need to be going into that class as soon as it becomes available, as soon as they can get in, rather than at the end, because you are relatively, I don't wanna say completely useless, but
You're not as
you're
important.
not as effective.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons why they did that is because of the 12-week.
It's
Right.
so onerous.
Right, and we just went through, you know, that turnover, but I know that Anna's gonna stick with it, and, you know, it's been going really smoothly, all things considered, because of something that she hasn't done. The other thing that concerns me is, you know, the 2-year term. If everybody is coming in fresh, and then they're supposed to leave in 2 years, what,
Well,
you know, having.
the 2-year term is not, you know, that's something that once again, you have control over.
That's why we staggered our terms on Northeast.
Yeah.
They can be staggered terms. The other thing is that someone may come on the council and be voted to serve on the council in February, while another person comes in June and serves. And so you have a continual flow of new persons serving on the council.
Show me that continuous
Flow.
flow
They
in
take
the
the flow.
Southwest.
Well,
Okay.
we've been
That's
fortunate.
another
Ours
thing.
Well, look,
is flowed very nicely.
it's 7:30, this has been a great discussion. I mean, this is really
Pete, you
what,
had some questions?
we're getting to the heart of that. But I want to open it up to the audience, and then I want to cover.
I'm gonna have to
two more
step out.
points.
Thank you, guys.
Okay,
Before
thank you.
leave,
Real quick.
You're the main guy that I want to talk to. I'd like to strongly encourage you to look at the budget, because the budget itself, it's a performance-based budget. And the budget, each individual department, including the police department, has to give what they've accomplished the previous years. And they have like 20 different entries. It lists the number of officers, it lists the number of felony arrests, it lists the number of misdemeanors. It's very detailed. And a performance-based budget is based upon what happened the year before with what is for the projected year. A lot of your questions that you're asking, you're going to discover it's right there at your fingertips. All you got to do is, and each department, there's 26 departments.
And this is the budget that just passed.
The budget, well, actually, all you need is the proposed budget. And the proposed budget itself, each department, 26 departments, have a summary, the additions that they're going to make, and then they have the performance measures. And as I said, there's about 30 entries just for the Albuquerque Police Department alone. One of the comments I wanted to talk about was when you were talking about recruiting. And by the way, when you look at, what you're going to discover is that they budgeted 1,000 officers. The reality of it is they only have employed 850. Of those 850 officers, only 436 are assigned to the field services.
of the 436, those are divided into 6 area commands, depending upon the number of calls for service. It also gives you the time to respond to the calls for service. Last year it was 11 and something minutes. This year it's at 12 and a half minutes. And the problem is that's just for priority ones. So you have 436 police officers that are responding to 69,000 priority 1 calls a year. I think that does not include 2s and 3s, and there's your problem. But what you may want to do at your CPCs, just go to the budget, click I think it's page 97 of the budget, in fact. The reason why I know that is I was looking at it today. That gives you APD's budget, and it gives you all the performance goals. So you don't, rather than, the frustration I got out of you is that you're sick of asking questions and not being given any information. There's a lot of this information that's readily available. Now, I wanted to address the issue involving recruiting, if I may.
Go ahead, real quick.
If I have time.
Yeah, but
I
before
will
you do that,
discuss it.
I want to catch you before you leave. July, I'm going to be available to do a refresher training with CPCs. I'm coming into town on a Saturday in July, so I just wanted to make sure of your availability, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th week of July, if you have a preference. That question goes to all the CPCs.
Not the 3rd one. That's it.
Okay, not the 3rd one. What about
I can offer you 3 Saturdays that work best, I think. 1, 15, and 29.
15, 1, 15, and 29, okay. One's not going to, it's going to be difficult for me, but 15 and 29 would.
Okay.
What about the others? They have a preference?
My calendar's open.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm wide open on the weekends.
Okay.
Could I interrupt a minute? Could I interrupt a minute? Paul Watson has been raising his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
Mr. Harness, are you going to discuss the monitor's report vis-a-vis this article that's being handed out at the entrance?
I hadn't planned on it, no.
He's on the agenda. He's going to come
So
up.
may I make just try to be a brief comment. To me, the elephant in the room in terms of recruiting people to be on CPCs is that these monitor reports are so damning with regard to their evaluation of the high command of APD not being willing to accept civilian oversight. People read this, if they're not, you know, if APD is not listening to DOJ, if the city attorney is stalling on everything, what makes people think that they're going to be listening to these CPCs and whatever resolutions we're supposed to, be passing? I'm all, I think the CPCs are great for building rapport. I think we have really good relationships with the local area commands. Fine people, fine officers, commanders, local commanders show up at our meetings. But this kills. This kind of stuff kills our ability to recruit. And to me, like I said, that's the elephant in the room. This needs to be addressed. And I'm wondering, did APD publish any kind of response to this newspaper article?
I haven't read that article.
And where,
And it's my letter to the editor that I wrote to the editor. And I got plenty of copies if you want.
This was not a CPC publication, right? Just a
That's right.
disclaimer.
Well,
it's got quotes from the monitor.
Yeah, I hear your point, but I think I think sort of the opposite view. I think that demonstrates even a greater need for CPCs.
Well, the need, yeah.
Yeah.
But in terms of people being inspired to take the time to go to a CPC, if the leadership of APD is being so bad at responding to I guess the CASA agreement,
well,
then
that's all the more reason for the CPCs and the collective memberships and the collective voice to put pressure on the leadership and to be heard.
I agree with that.
And how they do that, they can do maybe a better job at doing that in the future. They can continue to work on that. But I think if you really want to, if that's the conclusion, then the response, I think is part of what the CPC can potentially do.
And I think this can be a recruiting tool for us.
Yes.
When I see comments on Facebook or on the newspaper about, oh, APD's not doing a damn thing. Well, show up.
Right.
Get involved.
Show up.
Come out to your CPC meeting. Get involved.
And that's
So we
exactly what, the advocates come to me, and they, what are they doing? No one being responsive. I said, well, what are you doing? Show up at the CPCs.
Yeah,
The
well,
CPCs were created in the CASA for that very purpose.
It's why I
Show
come,
up.
it's why I come, but it looks like a lot of people don't come and are not inspired to come. Even the CPCs that are extremely successful, relatively speaking, in getting people to come. I mean, why aren't you enormously more successful? It's because this stuff is deterring people from being involved because they think it's useless.
Yeah,
And
well-
why aren't we talking about this? I mean, I would like to hear what the response, the APD response is to this.
Well, go ahead.
Paul, I know that one of the things that did help was Penny, so this is a letter to the editor, so it's an opinion.
Yeah, but it's
And-
got quotes from the monitoring report.
Sure. What did help is that Penny and the CPC members did also write a letter to the editor that the journal published. So those get published by you guys as well. You might consider writing your own letter to the editor about the value of what you see as a CPC member and what you see in the CPCs.
I'd like to make something very clear. The letter to the editor is one that I wrote.
Sure.
2/3 of it is this gentleman's words. He wrote it.
Sure, I haven't read it, I'm
Okay.
sure they are.
The reality of it is, I firmly believe in CPCs. I think they're of very vital importance to this community. But the Albuquerque Police Department is not listening to them. When you have a young man here that talks about enacting resolutions that virtually are not read or go unresponded to, you've got a real problem.
Sir, I'm not sure how you can point your finger at me.
Okay,
and be
let's-
so angry.
Let's tone it down.
I'm sorry.
Let's tone it down.
Pete, we've got, what Eric experienced is one thing. I'm here to tell you, we've got exactly the opposite response. Our recommendations have been read, they have been approved, they have been processed. We're seeing changes in policy, we're seeing changes that we have requested. They are being made. So we are being listened to. And we are seeing changes.
But Eric, wouldn't you say at one point things got lost?
Yes, absolutely.
And Nicole, I acknowledge Nicole has
Yeah.
made a big difference, but they're still not meeting what they've done.
And from a monitoring perspective, that's one thing that we look at.
Yeah.
That's why I brought it up in the very beginning, the whole resolution recommendation process.
And we've had some problems in the southeast.
Are you
With
creating
getting our
them? Are they being
recommendations and
tracked?
Resolutions
Yeah.
delivered.
Are they being responded to? Are they being acted on? And from a monitoring perspective, we are looking at that. And when they do it, we acknowledge it. When they don't, we acknowledge it.
I think one of the things that's important to understand that it's perfectly legitimate for the chief of police to respond. I'll give you an example, that it can't be done.
Right.
We have 2 resolutions, recommendations that we've submitted, and they're being rewritten right now to fit the format, the new format. One has to do with the weapon. One is, and I've got some supporting material to send along with that, is fingerprint recognition, so that a gun pulled from a holster or taken off the ground cannot be fired if it's not the officer's hand that's holding the gun. Another resolution, somewhat similar, is that, again, with some supporting technology, it will require a little bit of research and understanding, and there's some cost involved. When a weapon is pulled from a holster, that body camera is automatically turned on. The officer doesn't have to reach up and turn it on or make sure it's on. A weapon is pulled, the camera is on. Now, how much technology has to be worked? That's why we're sending some supporting material along with that. We've done some research. Those are 2 that we've actually prepared in the past and have submitted, and we've got no response, we've got no answer. We don't know what ever happened to them, so I'm putting them in the current expected format and will be resubmitted. Another one is a simple request. Some of our recommendations resolve or come from ride-alongs. One of the women that was on the council, she moved out of town, so she had to resign. But she was on a ride-along and they got a priority one call to a mobile home park. None of the homes, the mobile units, were identified with a number. Now, this is true of homeowners also. Bushes grew over the number. Some homes, the owner's taken the number off or painted over, whatever. The police department doesn't have to go out and resolve that problem. It could be handed off and a letter sent like this that says, we've forwarded your recommendation to another department. But the requirement, City of Albuquerque has a requirement that every home must be identified with a number. Mobile home park or a community of residents or an apartment building or anything like that. But it's a simple thing. She said, we spent so much time trying to figure out where the call was coming from, going out, looking at the map in the mobile home park to try to figure out which unit made the call. If the number had been there, they would have had it.
Right.
You know, so recommendations don't have to stay with APD.
No.
They can be handed over to another department within city government to resolve.
My experience from a monitoring perspective is it's been a hit or miss. Some recommendations have been reviewed, responded to, and acted on. Some have not. So it's been kind of a hit or miss thing. And that's something that I know we have to work on. We have to work with APD so we can get this more streamlined and more consistent.
Well, the point that I was trying to make is that you've had tremendous success with the writing of policy. You've had tremendous success with CPC providing the recommendations. But what was said in the last court hearing, where the rubber meets the road, is implementation by the Albuquerque Police Department of those very policies that you read, and they're not happening. It's a total failure. You may have 95 complaints.
But I want to separate, because I hear you, and it's all right there in the report for everyone to read, but I want to separate that from the resolutions that gets passed by CPC versus the requirements of CATSA. And so I'm focused on the resolutions right now that are passed by the CPC and their tracking, their review, and the response, and their actions. And as I said, from a monitoring perspective, what I have seen is sort of a hit and miss. And I think it's something we need to work on so it can be more consistent and more powerful.
Well, and the other thing is too, you know, as this gentleman said, you know, they've passed it on. Well, no, not everybody has gotten their recommendation. We haven't gotten it.
That's something that I think we need to work as a group,
right.
All 6 CPCs, we need to come up with a better line of communication amongst ourselves.
Well, Nicole told us to send them all to her and she would pass them on. And I don't think it's being done, quite frankly.
Doing that once they're approved as opposed to in draft format. So if you'd like her to do it in draft format, we could do it in draft format. You just have to, if that's what you'd like.
Yeah, we have to come up with what we want to happen with these.
Right.
So, and that's, as Selena just said, it's probably going to be a pretty simple change. But we have to request that. And if we haven't, we can't blame Nicole for not doing what we think she should be doing without telling her.
Right, but
So,
the point is that we tried to do what she said to do.
Yeah.
And it didn't work.
Okay, well, it's 20 minutes to 8, and we've been dominating the entire agenda, which is good. It's been a great discussion. I want to set a tentative date of July 15th to come back out here. And tentative, I have to make sure that it works for everybody.
Is that the 3rd?
Yeah, because Eric said he
Oh, I
couldn't
can't
do
do
the
the
third.
3rd. Okay, let's do it the 29th then. 29th.
29th?
July 29th, I'll come back out on Saturday. Do about 6 hours. In the meantime, I'll have you guys, send me emails on what you want to cover and all that.
Is it just for the CPC residents?
No, last time we opened it to everybody.
It was open to.
Okay.
It was open to all members.
Right. Yeah.
Which is
And we weren't even
the more the merrier.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the more the merrier. Please come. Please come. Please come. All welcome.
I think you'll find it's very informative.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
we need the input of the variety of.
And I'm there really to facilitate, I mean, all the knowledge is really in the
It's a
middle.
good learning experience
One of the things I want to
all over
clarify.
the town.
So is it that in some of the guidelines, a CPC voting member can't actually be voted in until they've gone on a ride-along?
No.
No? Okay.
You can
But
be
they need to,
voted-
they do need to go on a ride-along relatively soon after they've been voted in, right?
They should participate in a ride-along, but you don't have to have done a ride-along before you're on, well, you have to be approved for the background check.
Okay, so,
Okay.
just to move along, because it's quarter to 8, some things for the group to work on, just takeaways, is looking at the possibility of having standardized criteria, and then finding ways to streamline the APD requirement. Those are 2 meetings. And then July 29th is the tentative pay date. So, next on the agenda.
Thank you. While not addressing it specifically what is in Mr. Danelli's article, the theme of what I plan to present this evening is, in fact, resistance that we are finding with the department. And while I understand everyone goes through the Civilian Police Academy and they're very happy with the training and they're very happy with the officers when they leave, and they're very happy with the dedicated officers that they see doing the training. That is all well and good, and that is part of what I would consider the indoctrination that takes place for you to be on the CPCs. And yes, that sounds cynical, but in reality, that's really what it is. You don't have to be educated in policing to know when somebody's using too much force on you or somebody else. And you bring your citizen experience to the Citizen Police Academy, to the Community Policing Council. So I'm going to run 2 stories here, and I'm going to show you exactly what we did and what APD did in its reaction. And I'm sorry, but there's advertising that goes on with these, so bear with me.
What's going to happen to an Albuquerque police officer who accidentally fired his gun, shooting an innocent man in the back? According to the chief, nothing. Let's get to News 13's Marissa Lucero.
Dean, the citizens group that looks into police shootings and use of force cases recommended the officer be suspended for 11 days. The chief was having none of that.
One people in an apartment, one below the floor, it was being cut low, Is that what? Oh my gosh.
Now, it was back in December of 2014. Officer Thomas Nadas was climbing through a broken window in an apartment near East Central looking for a burglar. He stumbled, firing off a bullet from the floor, hitting his dad in the upper back in the apartment down below. The Civilian Police Oversight Agency investigated, and the executive director recommended an 88-hour suspension for Officer Nadas, primarily for having his finger on the trigger without a target or any intention to shoot. But News 13 has learned AP Chief Gordon Eden overruled that this month, opting for a written reprimand instead, saying while he agrees the officer violated that trigger policy, he has not shown a pattern of problems with his gun in the past. Now, the Civilian Police Oversight Agency, or CPOA, cannot appeal the chief's final decision on punishment. Back to you.
All right, Marissa, thank you. Documents from the CPOA show another Albuquerque police officer recently received a verbal reprimand for accidentally firing his gun. He was checking his gun at home when he fired a shot through his kitchen window and into his neighbor's house. In that case, no one was hurt.
Okay, so in reality, this officer was not checking for a burglary suspect. He was ordered to go into this residence to do a protective sweep a half an hour later so that forensic tech could go in and process a burglary scene. And in reality, there had been no burglary. The persons that entered that apartment through that window were authorized to do so by the occupant of that apartment. The occupant happened to be incarcerated at the time. The sergeant on scene never identified that there was a true victim in this burglary, which was not a burglary. And a protective sweep, if you read the case law, can only be done when it's in relative proximity to the person who was arrested. The person who was arrested was out on the street in a truck, not next to the apartment. The arrest did not happen adjacent to the apartment. There was no exigency. Okay? So, if you go to, how many people have been to our website? Okay, so if you go to our website, you will see the chief's response to our investigation. Now, without going through it, you will see that he spends 3 pages, because in our recommendation, we recommended that the sergeant on scene be investigated for ordering an improper search, because we believed that the search was improper. The chief spends 3 pages explaining why there was exigency and why the search was correct. He never says that, and therefore I'm not going to order an investigation. And he spends a paragraph on the shooting. This officer was in the apartment, he took a step, he discharged his weapon, he hit somebody in the neck. It cost the city almost $500,000 in liability. And this officer is going to get simply a written reprimand because he didn't have other firearms problems in his career. Now, does that make sense?
No.
It doesn't make sense to me either. And at the end of the story, there was a blurb, which I presented to Judge Brack, that when looking at another officer's disciplinary history in an unrelated matter, I discovered that there was a verbal reprimand for an accidental discharge. That accidental discharge was him firing through his kitchen into his neighbor's home. Now that's a negligent handling of a firearm. There may be an exception that he could claim he was doing his peaceful duties as a peace officer, but that's something that should have been handled in a more aggressive manner simply than a verbal reprimand. So take the time and go back and go to our website and read the chief's explanation for why that officer deserved only a written reprimand, in this case of an accidental discharge, which happened in 2014. Okay? So that's the one example that I bring to you today. The second one.
How long did it take for the chief to respond to your inquiry?
He responded in a timely manner in this one. One of the other issues that we've harped on is that the chief hasn't responded to any of our his non-concurrences to the POB. And what it says is he has to do that in 30 days, and he has to explain why he doesn't concur. So this is an example of the chief's non-concurrence letters that we've received, and we received a whole bunch of them in a batch. In this particular case, I do not concur with the finding sustained of the alleged violation, and I believe a finding of not sustained is more applicable. So he didn't want to sustain the officer for the violation 144, which is a conduct one, but he doesn't explain why. The ordinance says he's supposed to provide an explanation. So, let's go to another issue. Vehicle collisions. Does everybody follow us on Twitter?
Oh, yeah.
No?
No.
I
I'm not going to send out tweets on principle. God.
I don't follow you on Instagram either, by the way.
All right, here's the first story basis for the follow-up, which happened just this last Thursday at the POB. The background is we decided to look into the number of traffic accidents and to decide to determine whether or not APD was complying with its drug testing policy as it relates to vehicle crashes. And there's a certain criteria for when there's a drug test. And it's when the vehicle is towed or there are injuries and it has to be on duty.
Investigation by APD shows 121 of those 300 crashes were preventable. But Red Spring PD say their cops are taking nearly 1 million calls a year, that they're short-staffed running from call to call. Surveillance video shows a teenager waving a machete around a crowded Albuquerque grocery store. That April evening, police rushed to get there, including Officer Jonathan McDonald. He was driving with his lights and sirens on when he collided with the family's SUV. A little boy died in that crash. Now investigators are taking a hard look at accidents involving police officers. The Police Oversight Agency monitors every crash involving a police officer, from minor fender benders to major accidents. All of them get reported. According to the Civilian Police Oversight Agency, from February 2016 to January 2017, there were 300 accidents involving employees of the Albuquerque Police Department.
121 were deemed to be preventable.
Ed Harness is the head of the Civilian Police Oversight Agency. He
Don't
says
mind the
they're now
mess.
comparing the number of crashes involving APD officers to other cities with similar-sized departments.
The board believes that they're high, but we want to wait and make sure that we have the data to back that up first.
Harness says they should have that report next month. APD union reps say 300 crashes might seem high, but
These officers are dealing with an unprecedented amount of stress. They're running call to call to call. This is an aspect of being an understaffed police department.
Willoughby says officers are now taking nearly 1 million calls a year.
But life is waiting in the balance on the other side of that call. But you're going to get there as safely as quickly as you can.
The head of the Police Oversight Agency says when they're comparing APD to other cities with departments of similar size, they're also checking to see if those departments have take-home vehicles. APD officers do. If the Oversight Agency sees some red flags, they'll recommend changes to the chief. Again, that review should be finished in June. Back to you.
Okay, so here is the report that we received last Thursday. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right, Doug. APD was supposed to show up to a meeting here tonight to compare the number of accidents involving officers here in Albuquerque to other cities of similar size. But tonight, APD says they're having trouble getting that information. The head of the Civilian Police Oversight Board tells me she thinks that's an excuse, and she's fed up with it.
Arizona are making the public aware of a heartbreaking discovery in the hope of finding more information. In a message posted to Facebook, the Tempe Police Department shared details of the newborn baby girl found abandoned in a backpack on June 4th.
I have no idea where that's coming from.
The department noted the newborn was wrapped in a blanket and found with the Jonas Brothers backpack. The Post also asks anyone with information about the newborn.
All right, sorry about that. Oops. All right, so suffice to say what happened last Thursday was they came without any sort of written report. They produced no documentation, and they said they were having trouble getting the information. They asked for an extra month. It was supposed to be presented in May. They came in June, and they put up a poor data analyst, and I mean poor in that they put her up as the person to give the information for the incomplete report instead of the command staff saying, look, we didn't get the information, so they let her out there and left her out to dry and left the POB there to ask the questions of her, as opposed to the commander standing up and saying, well, we didn't get the information, we don't have the information, and we need more time. The board had already given a 30-day extension. They would have probably given another one for a complete report. The biggest point is that we only make recommendations just like the CPCs. And we are only going to be as strong as the community that's involved and backs us up. So we need your backing. We need you we need you to pay attention to what we're doing, and we need your backing when you believe that the department is wrong. And when you believe that you can influence some policies or you can hold the department accountable, we need you to step into that void, because we are only going to be as strong as the community that backs us up. Okay? These are just a couple of examples. All of our findings are on our website. All of the non-concurrences are there now. We made the point to Judge Brack in the last presentation that we completely support the monitor's position that there's a complete lack of accountability with the command staff at APD. The day-to-day officers do their jobs. They're not supported well by the command staff. They're held out and left in some points scapegoats. There's some issues coming up with the Force Review Board on Wednesday. It's not a coincidence that there's 2 cases coming up before the Force Review Board. Force Review Board has been meeting every week for the last 5 to 6 weeks. There's been 5 to 6 cases every meeting. So when the monitoring team is in town, the Force Review Board has only 2 cases. And they didn't shift the cases that they didn't hear last week. They picked 2 cases. One of them is an officer-involved shooting that is clearly reasonable force in this situation. The second one is an officer that they're going to hang out to dry, because this is the very first cert case that's ever been presented to the Force Review Board where they have found it's out of policy. It's the very first one. And in that, not only did they find that it was out of policy, they included this officer's personnel disciplinary record, which is supposed to be confidential, and the EIS system, which they say doesn't work very well. They included his numbers as well to show and justify that this is a bad officer that we need to discipline. So this is how the command staff treats the officers, and you wonder why there's bad morale at APD. It's because of the leadership of the department. So these are things that need your attention. These are things that you need to know is going on. And we need CPCs to look at these issues and bring up policy and hold their commands accountable as we go through these processes.
Hey, just a quick question. How often are you on the CPC agenda?
Well, I used to go to all of them, but if I'm requested to be on the agenda, I'll come. I'm going to be in Northeast in July.
Well, for those of you that want to spike up your attendance, it might be a draw card.
The board is the board is committed to taking up all the old officer-involved shootings. They've committed to taking on more than one a month. They're going to be reviewing these officer-involved shootings. There's all the other cases that come along, which I think would educate everyone as to how the command staff treats the frontline officers.
How does the board interact with internal affairs?
Fine. We have good cooperation with internal affairs.
They give you what you want?
We do. We get everything we need. As a matter of fact, they've put together a system to make it more efficient for the board members who are volunteers to be able to review the officer-involved shootings, so that, but for the Garrity materials, which have to be viewed at the department, all of the other materials for any case is now uploaded online for their availability.
Are they allowed to concur with the recommendations that the board makes to the chief?
The board makes the recommendations to the chief.
That's what I'm saying.
Are they allowed to concur?
Is internal affairs allowed to say, we've conferred with the board and we agree with the recommendations the board are making to the chief, or do I have that all?
It goes separately. The board makes its recommendation and then it works its way through the chain. Some cases are juxtaposed because of their age, and sometimes they include the internal affairs recommendation already. That's just the internal affairs recommendation. It hasn't gone through the chain of command. So IA would not get a finding from the POB to concur with. If it comes from the POB, it goes to command. IA would not be involved in that.
Do you think that would give your recommendations more strength though? IA said, we've looked this over, we agree with what they're saying.
No, no. Not with the current command situation, no.
When you say command, does that include commanders, or is that?
It includes command, it goes,
When you say command staff?
it goes from the commander to the area commander to the deputy chief and chief. It goes
Okay, so
that way.
that area commander
Right.
would be on up.
Right,
Okay.
right. So, Commander Campbell for you, she would be the first line, all the way up. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
We have some closing remarks from Elizabeth, and then we'll be on our way.
Thank you, Ed.
I know many of you because I've seen you at summits, at CPC meetings, and at community meetings. And I want to thank you for being here and for being a part of this important process. In April of last year, when Mr. Rickman hosted the 2 CPC trainings, he put me on the spot by asking, why did DOJ come to Albuquerque? And I responded by saying, we came because the community asked us to come here, because the community responded to what they were seeing. And it was the community that prompted DOJ to conduct a preliminary inquiry that led DOJ then to open a full-fledged investigation and follow through. And in doing that investigation, DOJ realized that this process was never going to be successful if the community did not have a meaningful voice in the process. And that's why this team, in negotiating the CASA, insisted on having a strong form of civilian oversight in the agreement, and insisted that there be a mechanism for regular community input into the reform process. And that's why CPCs are a part of the CASA. And as a member of the DOJ team, I want to thank you for the time that those of you who are on the CPOA and POB and on the CPCs are devoting to this process. Your role is invaluable. And as a resident of Albuquerque, thank you, because you are working on behalf of my community, and I appreciate that. It's late, so what I'd like to do at this point is introduce my boss, Acting U.S. Attorney Jim Tierney. Jim became our Acting U.S. Attorney when Damon Martinez, who you've seen at these meetings before, resigned in March. And after Jim says hello to you, Luis Salcedo, our team leader on the DOJ team, will be making some brief remarks. Thank you.
I just like to tell you to stick with it. What you do is important, really. And I'm here to show you that the Office of the United States Attorney supports what you're doing. You support DOJ in this effort. Your non-support will not decrease as long as I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have a whole lot to add beyond also thanking you for your participation in this process. We do this work around the country, and we've developed experience working with departments who have faced similar challenges. And one of the things that did work in Los Angeles that went through a similar court agreement was bringing the reform process out from the leadership offices of the police department to the community so that everyone knows. There's a huge investment going in to having an independent monitor, to having the federal court oversee these reforms, to a lot of investment in new equipment, in training, and personnel. And I think it's really important that the police department and the city share its accomplishments and its challenges, and that you all have an opportunity to ask questions, to learn more about what changes are taking place. I think after a meeting, after one of the monitoring reports are issued, it might be a good idea to invite the city and you know, instead of, everyone could look at the reports for themselves, read through them, formulate their own opinions, and then invite the city to answer questions that you might have about certain findings. I think one of the things we saw in Los Angeles is that the police department would have its self-report alongside the monitor's report. People were asking, well, why are you finding yourself in more compliance than the monitor? Are you looking at different things? Are you counting the same way? And so those are important questions, and you should know that the city does complete a self-report before the monitor does his report. And so there's a lot out there for you to learn and to be involved in. And we don't want it to be a mystery when we say that this case, the reforms that have been, the commitment that was made to reform the police department, that when DOJ says and the monitor says that there's full compliance, that you all know why you got to full compliance, and that you know and understand what changes took place. So as the U.S. Attorney said, we want to encourage you to continue to be involved, and whatever we can do to help support your efforts, please let us know. Whenever someone contacts DOJ about wanting to be more involved, we always say CPCs. You know, go to a CPOA meeting and get involved with what they're doing. So thank you very much for your being here today, and for your leadership and the CPC spokespeople who contributed this evening. And we will continue, DOJ will continue to be involved here as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that's it. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thank you, Ed.
Okay, see you guys in July.
Do y'all live here, or do you travel in to sniff around?
So they live here, and we're in.
Oh, so y'all are